I wrote a book once. Some of you know, some of you don't know. I became incredibly ill in 2004 or something, and developed a chronic illness, diagnosed chronic illness, autoimmune chronic illness that was pretty serious and certainly came on like a big wave at me that resulted in symptoms that were pretty diabolic, cool, and diagnosed as a you will have it for life. You will be on medication forever. You will probably have to have surgery to remove some of your parts. And I chose to head off in a different direction because I didn't like the what I was offered. Didn't seem like a good deal to me. So I headed off into the wilderness on my own with my wife, and became a kind of, went into the healing of this illness. And that journey took me on I would say a 10-15 year extraordinary journey into healing body, but really healing emotions, the emotions and the bodily symptoms and the bodily ability to heal seem to be inextricably linked. And that's not news to anybody, but to experience it from the inside was almost a kind of miracle. Needless to say, I don't have that anymore. There's nothing, just healed, really. And in fact, not even healed back to what I was, taken to a whole different level. Yeah, transformed is more the appropriate term. It was transformed. But one of the last chapters I wrote in that book, which is, it was a good 7 or 8 years ago or something, was Arise, Wounded Healer. Because it wasn't just a book about, my story. I used my story, but I actually pontificated a little bit, or offered, hope or yes, some insight for other people, prepared to go on the same journey, because it's a pretty difficult, arduous journey. Like all real journeys are arduous and difficult and challenging. We have to meet the boogeyman. We have to meet the shadow. We have to meet the skeletons in the closet. And damn it, illness is a sure as hell way of doing that, because they come at you. They really come at you, but they challenge your very reality. It's not some woo-woo spiritual journey. It's like hardcore. And I did all that, and I did all of that completely. And then in the so it was Arise, Wounded Healer, and I read it just a couple of days ago in preparation for this call, and I didn't like it. It wasn't really that well written, I must say, but it was pointing to the fact that I used to carry an idea of myself as being imperfect. And I think that imperfection, or so wounded by things that had happened to me, the emotional imperfection, not imperfection as, some consciousness. I wasn't there anyway, but actually wounded, deeply wounded. And I was deeply wounded. There was no two ways about it. But I carried that woundedness into my activity in the world, my less than-ness, my resentment of my father, the obvious, what had sort of caused my brokenness in the first place, which was a parental nuclear bomb. And all of these resentments and angers and problems, I actually internalized them. And then I started to take them out on my experience in the world. Addictions, dysfunctional relationships, trying to transact love in relationships, which is very difficult when you're wounded, but it's de rigueur. That's what we do in the world. We transact our relationships, we transact love. usually from a wounded place, because everybody's carrying a wound. So, all of my manifested addictions, and boy, did I have a few of them, with all, and the dysfunctional relationships were all the idea that there was something wrong. Always there was something wrong. And, I remember feeling, if I can only get this, if I can only sort this out, if I can get somehow beyond it. And I realized it was a bit of a trick of the mind. And I only reached that ability to see that it was a trick of the mind when I'd let go of the whole idea that there was something wrong with me. There was nothing wrong with me. Each tree in the forest grows in its own way. They all carry wounds. You don't get many trees that haven't got gnarly bits. They've seen a lot of action. They've seen storms. They've seen this. Some of them even get chopped down eventually, or, felled by a gale that comes along. But the ones that stand there, they stand there, tree. Beautiful in its imperfection. And I started to embrace this idea that actually, wow, I'm playing a game here. I'm playing a waiting game. And it's not something you can cheat. The authenticity of us, those of us who are in search of authenticity, or the authentic way, or the authentic life, you can't cheat it. How can you cheat it? We live in a cheating world in many ways, where people are wearing their masks all the time. We see it, but we don't know who's wearing a mask and who's not wearing a mask. But the majority of us and them are wearing masks, because the authentic state is it's a different world. It's a different way of being. It's got a different quality to it. The armor is off. We make a mockery of it, don't we? The emperor has no clothes. This is, we make a mockery of nudity. But nudity is a metaphor for us. The authentic way is the naked way. You can't fake it. You can't fake it. You certainly can't fake it to yourself. Listen, that's what you've been doing. Why can so it becomes this, either one falls deeper into the embracing of perfection, wounds, issues and all, and looking around inside oneself says, there's something still needs to come home in me. Something still needs to come home. Is it something, some insult, some righteous, some issue that happened back there with my father, mother, sister, yada, yada? Or is it something that I still just cannot let go of? Just cannot let go of it because it shouldn't have happened. The old "it shouldn't have happened" story. And it's a plausible one. I'm certainly not, decrying or belittling any of these things, because God knows they're powerful drivers of us. Is it possible to let go of that anyway? Is it possible? It's always my question. Ends up always being the same question. The "is it possible" question. I think it is, and I think just meandering on a little bit further down the river, I think we're in the time where this is more possible than ever. The gates are open. Don't ask me how or why. I think it's some galactic movement or evolutionary impulse, because for a world that we've lived in, and many, all of us, generations of generations have lived in, is in a state of collapse. And it needs to. Something within us is in a state of collapse, and it needs to collapse. Maybe it's this very thing that needs to collapse. This idea. because there is a sense that we need to somehow arise in our wholeness with that humility, with the grace, with the tenderness, with the kindness, but not from separation, and not as the violence or the dividedness that we see in the world manifesting. It's done. I think it's playing itself out. So this call is the call for, is it possible for us to walk, wounds and all? They no longer define me. That's what I'll end with. They no longer define me. I'm defined by presence. I'm defined by my willingness. I'm defined by my humility. I'm defined, if anything defines me, which how can you define emptiness? How can you define naturalness? But it's got a quality to it. It's got an authentic quality to it in an inauthentic world. What greater gift is there than that? That's the only gift there is. That was what I realized. The only gift I had to offer the world was no more bullshit. No more bullshit.